Right now, in stadiums across 3 countries, tens of thousands of strangers are screaming in unison. They are painting their faces. They are wearing the same colors. They are singing the same songs. And they have never met each other. That should seem strange, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is far older than football. The 2026 World Cup is the biggest sporting event in human history. 48 nations, 16 cities, billions of eyes watching. But strip away the cameras, the sponsorship logos, and the LED scoreboards, and what you are actually watching is something your ancestors did around a fire 50,000 years ago. The names have changed, the stakes look different, but the ritual is identical. Let's go back. Long before cities, long before writing, long before anything you would call civilization, your ancestors lived in small groups. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying these groups and discovered something remarkable. The human brain evolved to track relationships with roughly 150 people. That's it. That was your whole world. Your tribe? Your survival depended entirely on those 150 people trusting you and you trusting them. But here's the problem. Humans didn't stay in groups of 150. They grew. They expanded. Tribes merged. Territories overlapped. And suddenly, you had thousands of people who needed to cooperate. People whose faces you didn't know, whose names you'd never heard, whose loyalty you couldn't verify. How do you bind strangers together into something that functions like a tribe? You invent ritual. Anthropologist Victor Turner studied indigenous cultures across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia throughout the mid-20th century. He found the same pattern repeating everywhere humans gathered. Ritual was never just ceremony, ritual was technology. It was the tool ancient humans used to dissolve the boundary between self and group, to make strangers feel like brothers, to turn individuals into something larger than themselves. Sound familiar? Think about what happens to your body when your team scores. Your chest tightens first. Then there's the surge. Something between electricity and heat moving from your stomach upward. Your throat opens before you've made a conscious decision to scream. Your arms go up without instruction. And the stranger next to you, the person you've never spoken to, is doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same moment. For 1 second, the boundary between you disappears. Neuroscientist Tania Singer at the Max Planck Institute has spent years mapping what happens in the brain during shared emotional experiences. When two people feel the same emotion simultaneously, their neural patterns synchronize. Their heartbeats begin to align. Their breathing falls into the same rhythm. This is not metaphor. This is measurable. And it is ancient. It is the same mechanism that once allowed your ancestors to rush a predator together, to mourn a leader together, to dance around a fire together until the distinction between individual and tribe ceased to exist. The World Cup triggers that mechanism at a scale that would be incomprehensible to any ancient tribe. But the mechanism is the same one. Now here's where it gets strange. Your brain doesn't actually care whether the 22 men on that pitch are part of your bloodline. It doesn't care whether you've ever been to the country whose jersey you're wearing. It doesn't care whether you speak the language or know the capital city. What it cares about is the signal, the color, the symbol, the shared story. Psychologist Henry Tajfel demonstrated this with brutal simplicity in experiments conducted in Bristol in the 1970s. He divided strangers into groups based on nothing. Literally nothing. He told some people they preferred one style of abstract painting, others a different style. That was the only difference. And yet, within minutes, people were favoring members of their arbitrary group over members of the other. They felt loyalty to strangers they had nothing in common with except a randomly assigned label. Your brain is running the same algorithm right now. The flag draped over your shoulders isn't meaningless decoration. It is tribal markings. It is the painted face of an ancient warrior signaling to every other warrior in the group. I am one of you. My survival is tied to yours. When you win, I win. And when the other tribe wins, that pain is real too. After Morocco's stunning run in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, researchers studying North African diaspora communities across Europe found something that surprised even them. Second-generation Moroccan immigrants who had grown up in France, in Spain, in the Netherlands, people who had been born in those countries, educated in those countries, who held those countries' passports, reported feeling a sense of ancestral pride they described as visceral, like something had been returned to them, like a wound, one they hadn't known was open, had briefly closed. The World Cup doesn't create identity, it reveals it. It reaches into the layers of the self that daily modern life buries under deadlines and commutes and grocery lists, and it pulls out the part of you that still knows what it means to belong to something. That's what your ancestors understood intuitively. That took scientists decades to prove. Here is what the ritual actually does. In the ancient world, the anthropologist Barbara Meyerhoff, who studied the Huichol people of Mexico across her career, described ritual as a mechanism that makes the invisible visible. You cannot see loyalty. You cannot see belonging. You cannot see the bond between a group of strangers. But you can see 80,000 people wearing the same colors, singing the same words, rising and falling together with every near miss and every goal. The invisible becomes visible, and once you can see it, it becomes real. That is what the chant is for. That is what the jersey is for. That is what the face paint is for. Not performance, not entertainment. These are ancient instruments for building the thing human beings cannot survive without, the feeling of being known and the knowledge that others stand with you. Now think about what this means for 2026. For the first time, the World Cup will be hosted across 3 nations simultaneously: the United States, Canada, and Mexico. 3 countries, 3 distinct cultures, 3 national identities that have not always stood easily next to each other. And yet, for 1 month, the borders between them will exist differently. A Mexican fan in Dallas and an American fan in Guadalajara will be watching the same thing, feeling the same thing, running the same ancient neural software. No political speech does this, no policy does this, no treaty does this. A ball moving between 22 men does this. There's a question worth sitting with. If the World Cup is tribal ritual at planetary scale, and the science says it is, then what does that mean about us? It means that beneath the noise of every modern disagreement, beneath every border and ideology and language barrier, there is a common hardware running in every human skull on this planet. Hardware that was built for exactly this: to feel the surge, to scream in unison, to dissolve into something larger than the self. The ancient tribes around their fires already knew this. They didn't need neuroscience to tell them that shared experience creates bonds nothing else can. They already knew that the ritual mattered more than the outcome, that the moment of collective feeling was itself the point. You are going to watch the 2026 World Cup, or you are going to be surrounded by people who do. And in those moments, when the goal goes in, when the crowd erupts, when complete strangers embrace in streets you've never walked, what you are witnessing isn't sport. What you are witnessing is ancient. It is the oldest technology your species ever invented. And right now, in stadiums across 3 countries, tens of thousands of strangers are screaming in unison. And they have never felt less like strangers.